raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
We have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty.
Now you get RFK Jr.
Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again?
You get Tulsi Gabbard.
Putting our country in a continual state of war.
You get Elon Musk and you get J.D. Vance.
A hell of a way to start the next 4 years.
The right-wing Avengers.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength.
Shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one.
The rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
The golden age of America has most definitely begun.
Begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
They're getting the dirtbags off these streets.
There's one guy who can fix this shit, and it's Donald Trump.
What's storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Go and tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut him down, tell him that God's gonna cut him down. Well, my goodness gracious, let me tell you the news. My head's been wet with the midnight dew. I've been down on bended knee, talking to the man from Galilee. He spoke to me in a voice so sweet, I thought I heard a shuffle of angels' feet. He called my name and my heart stood still when he said, John, go do my will. Go tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut him down, tell him that God's gonna cut him down. You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Well, you may throw your rock and hide your hand, working in the dark against your fellow man, but as sure as God made black and white, what's done in the dark will be brought to the light. You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Go tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut you down, tell him that God's gonna cut you down, tell him that God's gonna cut you down.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh, and welcome to the Repill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Friday. I hope everybody is doing well out there. I'm exhausted from last night after the DEF CON 0. Man, we go late. Man, Sundays and Tuesdays we go really, really late. But you know what? It's well worth it. And last night, one heck of a show, myself and Alpha, talking about a lot of interesting topics there. And, man, I just got to get caught up on sleep, I guess. But starting to feel better. I still got the chest cold. It's been kicking my butt lately the last few days, but, rest is what you need when you have these things going on. Other than that, man, we got some interesting things happening in the world. We're going to discuss them tonight. Number one is, how are you guys doing? Let's hear you in the chat. Let's get some call outs. Let's good evening, digital soldiers. Let's roll from Stephen Norman. Yeah, absolutely, brother. That's right, man. You know, it's I love the interactivity on the chat. I got the Rumble chat on my phone, like right in front of me. I got the X chat sitting over here. And then I get the X chat, Facebook chat, and YouTube chat right here on my side. And then Pilled, I got up here, but it's on a different window because I only have 2 monitors. So, but Pilled I got right over here. But we kind of decreased the amount of platforms that we were streaming on. We used to do BitChute and Kick. Kick, I mean, I got like 5 subscribers in a year. So just wasn't conducive. And BitChute, I think we get like 3 or 4 views an episode, just not conducive. Our audience is here at these platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on X, we're on Rumble, we're on Pilled, and D Live. Can't forget about D Live. And D Live's a hard chat to get to just because it's in there, but it's on that page with Pilled. So I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. And I used to have my D Live chat up here on the right-hand side, but D Live changed their login credentials on the platform that I use, and I can no longer sync it. So that's the unfortunate part. But, you know, just want to tell you guys, I appreciate y'all. Hope you guys are amazing. And thank you so much for all the support over the years and even today and for all the years to come. Because, you know, even when we have world peace, even when this world is like, oh my God, Donald Trump brought world peace, it's so amazing. Like there's not a nuclear missile in the world. Even when that happens, there's still going to be conspiracy. There's still going to be evil in the world. There's still going to be things to talk about. There's still going to be things happening. It's never going to end, and I'm not going to stop either. So hope you guys all know that. And starting with Donald Trump, why don't we just go here? He just literally posted, and I'm glad I caught this before the show because I've been waiting for this one. 14 people were shot over the weekend in Chicago, 4 dead. What does failed Governor Pritzker and the equally pathetic mayor now say? Bring in the federal government and bring them in now. Love it. And so, 10. All right. So, interesting enough, if you go through the capitalization of the words, right, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, comma as a character, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So you take the bring to the end of the exclamation points with the comma. That's 14, 14 repeated twice, the 2 specific numbers. And then if you look, he says 4 dead, but he spells out 4. So he's bringing attention to the 1-4 here. So 1-4, that's interesting. Now, first thing I'm going to point out is that this was posted at 8:38 p.m. Now, I'm Central Time, so it says 7:38, but it's 8:38 p.m. Now, yesterday we had a Delta. And the Delta yesterday that a lot of people were talking about is this little small thing you see on your screen, because I haven't blown up my screen yet. October 21st. Booms en route tomorrow. This is not a drill. Okay? We're going to get into this. This actually makes a lot of sense. So the timestamp that we just talked about was 8:38. Now, what are the odds? What are the odds? Boom. Boom. Well, and so it's interesting because it has the time signifier, the numerical signifier of 14. Well, what does 14 mean? Well, go back to Donald Trump's post, go back to the post here. Go to 14, and we just slide it over a little bit, and there's Q14, and it's the famous Washington crossing the Delaware, the cornerstone or the keystone post. Now, I can pull this up on the boards because that's going to be a lot easier to show it to you in perspective. But this is the post that I said everybody for the longest time needs to pay attention to. And so we'll bring it over here on the big screen, Q14. SCIF, military intelligence. What are state secrets and how upheld in the Supreme Court? What must be completed to engage military intelligence over 3-letter agencies? Okay, so we can just take this and break this down. Okay, what is state secrets and how are they upheld in the Supreme Court? There's various different Supreme Court cases that a lot for this. Now, in the context of state secrets, this one isn't relevant. What we're talking about is how do you get information directly out of military intelligence and correlate that into entering evidence legally into an investigation. So we got grand juries going on in New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Florida. How do you get that information out into them? Well, you have to get control over the 17 intelligence agencies that have undermined you your last administration. And how do we do that? Well, you have to engage military intelligence over them. And that's where Tulsi Gabbard comes in, still a lieutenant colonel. We've talked about this. We've laid all this out. And so what must allow for civilian trials? Well, Tulsi Gabbard has to send criminal indictments to the DOJ or criminal referrals to the DOJ. And this is exactly what we've been seeing. James Comey, John Bolton, John Brennan, and we're about to see more. I mean, they've even sent Barack Obama over there. So now we go down here a little bit, and this is where it starts to get really interesting of what I'm talking about today, of what this boom actually means. So why is Antifa allowed to operate? You got to remember, the word allowed is very important right there. If you go back up to Q12, right? And we can do this right here. We'll just go back up to Q12 real quick because it brings relevance to, to why Antifa's allowed to operate. Military intelligence reference above is the absolute biggest drop on this board you will ever receive. Now think about why Antifa plays right into the plan. Antifa plays into the plan. Q14 says, why are they allowed to operate? Because they play into the plan. This is the requisite that was brought about for Donald Trump to issue an executive order determining Antifa to be a domestic terrorist organization. Currently, last week, he said, let's make them an international terrorist organization or a foreign terrorist organization. Declaring that. That gives the legal precedent to use authorized use of military force, 2001 post 9/11 doctrines in the United States of America, allowing the U.S. military to engage foreign terrorist actors inside of our country. And so this is kind of what this also talks about here, is we go in, and where was it? Why hasn't the Muslim Brotherhood been classified a terrorist organization yet? Well, they were actually talking about this a week and a half ago. So what happens if Soros-funded operations get violent, engage in domestic terrorism? What happens if mayors, police commissioners, chiefs do not enforce the law? Well, think about this, governors and mayors. He just mentioned Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson of Chicago. What authority does POTUS specifically have over the Marines? Quick reactionary forces out of Quantico that can be deployed in the event of the Insurrection Act or martial law. Why is this important? Was Trump asked to run for president with assurances made to prevent tampering? Yes, he was. How is POTUS always five-step? Who is helping POTUS? The military. So this is your boom for the day. Now, there was one point I wanted to bring out there. Well, actually, it goes for, actually, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to grab a certain video that I don't think I had on my timeline. Nope, I know I don't. But I could actually go grab it right here. That's not actually the one I wanted. So let me pull this up real quick. Oh, there it is. Okay. And we've had violent protests over the last few days. Specifically here in New York City, this is another 100 ICE protesters at ICE in New York City Square. This is ongoing night after night, and by the middle of the night, this is going to turn violent. And this is how it's been going. And you got to remember, this is how the George Floyd riots all started up. They all started with these small little protests, yay, and then they continued and continued and continued, and then all of a sudden, boom, it got violent. I can't even see. Now, what does Tulsi Gabbard say about all this? Well, this is interesting because I'm going to actually talk at length a little bit about this because I believe that this is all planned and coordinated. But listen to Tulsi with Jesse here.
The reason why I and so many others have left the Democrat Party, when you look at this party that is more interested in protecting criminals, cartel members, gangs, those who are causing incredible harm, ravaging our communities across the country, than they are actually standing up for the victims. You see a party that in many cases celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You see a party now that is essentially putting the lives of our law enforcement and their families at great risk. This is not the values of our country. This is not the values of the First Amendment and peaceful protest. This is a party that's undermining the very foundation of our country and putting the American people at risk, which is why President Trump, throughout his entire campaign, he promised the American people, I will make America safe again. I will secure our borders, and I will go after these cartels and gangs who are terrorizing the American people, raping young girls, causing incredible harm. And that's exactly what he's doing. I think the thing that's interesting to point out here, Jesse, is as you look at these law enforcement officers who are working for ICE, ICE's recruitment numbers have skyrocketed since President Trump took office, even in the face of these kinds of threats coming from some very powerful Democrat politicians across the country. Why is that? Because they are signing up to serve and protect the.
So, Tulsi talking right there. ICE numbers have skyrocketed. People are ready to serve. People are ready to help change this country. But there's the question of the Democrats. What's really going on here with the Democrats? How are the Democrats actually involved in all of this? And I probably should just use that. I can use that position to go in here and actually pull these other ones out because they're not too far behind. Where is it? Well, I can actually talk from memory on all this. We have the shutdown for the 12th time in a row. The Democrats have came in and it basically created the shutdown all over again. They don't want the shutdown to end. Well, why don't the Democrats want the shutdown to end? Well, it's the war of attrition. Think about it. The Democrats only have one position of power right now in the world, and that is to leverage the shutdowns. Now, do they give a shit? No, they don't give a shit about the average American person. Listen, right here. This is the Democrat whip.
I mean, shutdowns are terrible. And of course, there will be, families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility very seriously. But it is one of the few leveraged times we have. I mean,
she's okay with families suffering because it's their time, their only time to leverage the power that they have. That's sick. That's disgusting. That's psychopathic. So what we're actually seeing, the shutdown is being persisted, allowing Americans to get injured and hurt, allowing Americans to suffer so the Democrats can progress their agenda. Now, what agenda is that? Well, we've actually known for a long time exactly what the Democrats were going to do. Alex Jones has called it the Podesta Plan. And this is actually A24 Studios in the movie Civil War. This is where they got the idea, which, by the way, was owned by Barack Obama's production company, and how that all came about. And the Podesta Plan was I think it was a 2022 scenario, kind of a thought exercise of what happens if they did lose power. Well, they would produce a color revolution and they would induce a civil war. Well, Ray Dalio, who is, let me see here. See if I can find this. Ray Dalio, if you don't know, he's the chairman of Bridgewater Capital. And he's also a member of the World Economic Forum, Bilderberger, everything like this. Back in 2020, he wrote a book called The Great Reset, quite literally. This is Ray Dalio, worth about $18 billion. And this is 3 minutes long, but listen, I think this is the clip. Charlie Rose, I think this is the clip. But listen to what he says here.
History has shown you go to greater and greater extremism, and then you have the battle. And I think that that's what we should be afraid of most, is that those extremists in a battle having a type of civil war, which I think there's a reasonable chance of. When I say,
what do you mean by civil war?
A civil war, I think we will, that the rule of law and constitution can be of diminished value relative to power. such as in the elections, neither side accepting losing, such as the Supreme Court makes rulings that are not followed by states, such as population moving from one state to another because the values in that other state are more there. So then it becomes a make me type of situation. Rather than saying, what is the law? It says, make me do that thing. And now when we lose that kind of rule of law and respect for the whole, I think that's a type of civil war. When you watch that, who knows where that leads? I don't want to create histrionics, but I do think.
But are you suggesting it could lead to violence and it could lead to?
It could lead to violence. I'm not saying it will lead to violence, but the whole idea of in the Constitution of holding arms, and how many there are more arms than there are people, and so on. And when you get into a make me mentality, you could get into an armed situation where a lot of people and guns and crazy things. I'm not saying I'm not going that far, but I'm saying could. But let's bring that back a notch and talk about can we imagine, you and I, we know history and we look at today and it's different. Could we see the failure of following the rule of law and the Constitution? So somebody gets elected and you now know who's going to be in the seat, or you don't follow that and you get into a power-based situation? Yes, there's a possibility. And the fact that we consider that to be a significant possibility, I put the odds of something like that at about 40%.
40?
40% of that.
Happen.
40. Let me be clear. 40% that you have a combination. You don't follow the rule of law. That you have a power-based system in which there's not sanctuary cities and those types of things.
You also make this point. You lose the value of truth.
Oh, well, yes, of course.
No one knows
we don't know what
believe.
Truth is.
Exactly.
Because history has also shown, and we see it, that people have to pick a side. They pick a side and they speak to us. So
this is moral framing being done by Ray Dalio. He's framing the leftist perspective of what happens if Trump gets in the office. Now, this is interesting because in a previous interview with Charlie Rose, or maybe it's even the same interview, just a different clip, he goes, let's look at the results of the 2024 election, which had not happened yet. And he says, let's assume that the Republicans win the 2024 election. He says, so the Democrats are not going to believe that. They're not going to believe the results, and there will eventually be a civil war. And he said, if the Democrats win, the Republicans are definitely not going to believe it, and there will definitely be a civil war. And he says it's an inevitable consequence of the situation that's been produced psychologically by both sides. Now, this is framing back in 2022 of what was potentially going to happen. And now we saw the Podesta plan come out. And now we're seeing it actually play out in live perspective. One little correction here. We had a gentleman here, 10-4, good buddy. You missed the point, bro. She was a major Democrat turned Republican. Actually, she was a Democrat turned populist, and I didn't miss the point. I was just trying to roll with the context of what I was actually talking about. She's talking about the radicalization of the lefties and how this is all brought about the current situation that we're seeing with the rise of them in the streets and why she left the Democrat Party. This is the point. This is what we're talking about. This is what Ray Dalio is talking about. Is we're looking at this situation, and right now on the left, you're seeing an incitation of violence directly from the left. I mean, from Gavin Newsom on all the way down. You're not seeing it from the right, except for the right defensively, utilizing government, federal officials, and National Guard to defend the innocent people on the streets. At least that's my perspective. So the shutdown actually becomes the war of attrition that leads to this buildup. And why is that? So go in here real quick. There we go. Yep, the governments have shut down the government at the same time their organizers and financiers are funding a color revolution. I want you to think about that for a second. Glenn Beck actually lays this out, and we'll listen to Glenn Beck just for a second.
Example, the road indivisible. This was created by a couple of former congressional staffers named Ezra Levin and Leah Greenberg. I've been talking about color revolution for years now. And the reason these revolutions have been dubbed color is because of the marketing tricks the organizers use. For example, the rose revolution, the orange revolution. Now listen to this little No Kings Planning webinar hosted by Ezra and Leah. Listen to what takes center stage for all of their preparations. Listen.
What's getting organic pickup that we can start to pull out and capitalize on, right? And so thinking about things that we're seeing pop on the internet, things that we're seeing start to like take off in places like Reddit. The color yellow and black have come up a lot, which is obviously very like, you know, kind of people taking pieces of the No Kings logo and running with it as a color scheme.
Did you know that they were encouraging people to wear yellow? I immediately thought of the yellow vests, because remember the yellow vest? That same kind of thing. They're discussing in public which color to use for their revolution. This is a color revolution, and it is being planned as a color revolution. And they are consulting intellectuals who have made color revolutions their main field of research, which brings us to the first name I want you to know and the first book. In another planning webinar for No Kings, Ezra and Leah featured a Q&A with a Harvard affiliate woman named Erica Chenoweth. She, or they, as this person likes to go by, whatever, has been researching successful color revolutions for a very long time now. It was her study of color revolutions that found the number 3.5%. She called it the 3.5% rule, how a small minority can change the world. You want to know what the next few years, if No Kings is an indicator, is going to look like? Read this book, the book titled Why Civil Resistance Works. Okay? Her work looks like it was heavily influenced by another color revolution intellectual, and I want you to listen to this part of her Q&A with the Indivisible co-founders, where she mentions resources people can look up to further the cause. Listen.
There's some interesting stuff happening. There's a good list that's easy to find. If you went to like Gene Sharp's list of 198 non-violent methods, is like just one of those low-hanging, easy access resources. And there's under economic non-cooperation, there's like a really long list. And then there's other kinds. There's social and political non-cooperation as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the second name I want you to research and bone up on, and Gene Sharp. Sharp was the political science professor at the University of Mass, Dartmouth. Oh, and he also wrote a book in the 90s that was later characterized as the Bible of activists, From Dictatorship to Democracy. It was a successful handbook for a successful revolution by peaceful means. It would go on to be translated into more than 30 languages. It has been smuggled into multiple countries, and color revolution typically follows soon after. From revolutions in Eastern Europe to the Arab Spring, activists on the ground reportedly were trained right off the pages of this book, From Dictatorship to Democracy. If you want to be able to understand, predict, and counter the narratives being thrown around at No Kings and other color revolution events in the next few years, you have to read this book. Give it to your elected official.
Okay. I just saw that Donald Trump posted. All right. We're sitting here. We're doing the show. We got Glenn Beck talking about color revolutions, right? And I saw that Donald Trump posted. I'm going to go there, and I want you to look exactly what Donald Trump just posted moments ago. Right? We go in here. This literally 8:13 p.m. This is less than a minute ago. It's so early the video hasn't loaded, but what do you notice? It's not loading. I think that I got to it so fast that the video hasn't even fully loaded. My one complaint against True Social, by the way. Let's let this load. Come on. Come on, True Social. You can do it. Well, for some reason, it's not loading. I don't know why. We'll give it a second here. But I got it playing on my phone right now. It's exactly what we're talking about right now on this show. Now, this is interesting. I'm not saying that Trump's watching the show. If you are, sir, thank you very much. I'm honored. But it's not loading on your True Social account. So what I'll do is I will close this window out and actually reopen it and see if we can bring that up in a different window, because maybe it's just a corrupted browser window. But I was noticing the timestamp, which is just same reference frame, right? The timestamp for this one was 1:57 on the video. Well, let's take a look at it, because what he's talking about, he's got Glenn Beck on there talking about color revolutions. I mean, well, what are the odds of that, right? I mean, that's just mind-blowing, dude. Like they are watching from the White House. Sir, if you're watching from the White House, give us another 14 in a Truth Social post. Give us a 14. That'd be awesome. So, funny, we were just talking about the keystone, the post number 14, the keystone. What is a key? What is a key used for? What is a guard? What is a guard used for? What unlocks the door of all doors? Was it pre-planned? I just showed you the Ray Dalio. I just showed you in talking about the Podesta plan. Do you believe in coincidences? What is information? Who controls the release of information? Who has all the information? Military intelligence, right? Define corruption. Wealth equals power. Power equals influence. Influence equals control. Rinse and repeat. What power of influence was recently discovered, specifically 2016 election? Digital media. How much power of influence does Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, etc. have on influence the minds of people? Has a stranglehold of the mainstream media been diminished? What is open source? What has become blatantly obvious since the election? Right? Absolutely relevant. I love it. Just interesting times we live in. And this video still hasn't loaded. There it is. I got it. So let's go to the video.
Movement is truly against billionaires and the powerful. Why is it funded by billionaires and the powerful? This is not about dismantling power. This is about rearranging power. So according to several sources, including Fox News, George Soros and his Open Society Action Fund granted $3 million to Indivisible. Now, this is one of the primary organizers of the No Kings protest. Soros's larger network, the Open Society Foundation, gave over $7.6 million to the same operation.
Bet they mentioned Indivisible.
Almost at $11 million. But Soros is not alone. If you follow the funding trail, it leads to, what a surprise, the Arabella Network. Now you add in the Bill Gates Foundation, or the Ford Foundation, or here's my favorite, the Rockefeller Network. There is now this organization funded by billionaires, Riots, Inc., and it is the permanent protest industrial complex. These tactics were developed by the CIA, and they're called color revolutions. And what they do is they flood the streets with, quote, organic protesters. They control the media narrative. They destabilize the existing system, and then they overthrow that system and install a new one. It is part of a longer game. Once you convince free people that freedom itself is the problem, they'll beg for a change. And that's when the kings, the real kings, step out from behind the curtain. When there's an emergency for your own good, you have to remain inside. You're not an essential worker. You can only shop at Home Depot. That's the sign of a king. Kings, they don't have to wear crowns. Usually kings just sign checks. Sometimes they fund revolutions. They are the ones writing the script for the resistance, for their own power and kingdoms.
Mind-blowing. I was going to just let the other Glenn Beck clip just play. And, yeah, Donald Trump instead posted that beauty right there. And he posted another video. Do you want me to show the next video? He just posted this a few seconds ago. It's about Kamala. It's okay. But Trump or Scavino, if you're listening, throw a 14 out there on True Social. Let's see it. let's see a big old number 14 all over again. Give us that clue. I mean, that was huge. That was huge. And yeah, that's right. Colonel Towner, Gladio. This is what we are witnessing right now, guys. We are watching the formation of a color revolution. The shutdown that is being perpetuated by the Democrats right now. This is the war of attrition. Their objective is to make law enforcement and military suffer long enough without a paycheck that they no longer want to show up in cities, to be ICE, to be federal agents, to be the military. That's their objective. Starting to make sense now of why we are in this situation, why Donald Trump is deploying the National Guard to San Francisco, Chicago, the 12 different cities. Why we have the military on the border, 20,000 troops all at the ready. Why we have a whole military fleet sitting down off the coast of Venezuela, which, by the way, we're going to transition into Venezuela real quick. Because this is where it gets really, really, really interesting. You know, we had the ghost of Base Patrick Henry on with us last week on DEFCON 0. And he's like, no, dude, Maduro is working for Trump. And I'm like, wait, what? He goes, well, Maduro's a CIA plant. The CIA is now controlled by Trump. Trump just said he's got the CIA inside Venezuela. And then that Maduro is maybe being controlled by various powers and he wants to live. So he's got to abide by them. But in the backdrop, he's got to do something, right? And I'm like, okay, maybe. But then you got to start to look at the powers that maybe control Maduro. And we have to kind of recollect this for a second. Number one is the tactic that Donald Trump is using, and Glenn Beck was actually talking about it earlier. It's the idea of the Monroe Doctrine. And if you didn't know what the Monroe Doctrine was, is after the Napoleonic Wars, many Latin American countries were gaining independence from Spain and Portugal, and the U.S. feared that a Holy Alliance, Russia, Austria, Prussia, might try to help Spain reclaim its colonies. The Monroe Doctrine declared that the Americas were off limits to European imperialism. And so, really simple, stay out of our hemisphere to the European nations. Stay out of our hemisphere. So Trump is reiterating this right now with the power and authority of the U.S. Navy in the South Pacific area of operation. Now, I've said this for a while. I said, look, if this was just counter-narco terrorism, you know, why are we only operating in the Caribbean? Why aren't we operating in the Pacific? I showed you that area of operation. I served down there. I did, 2.5 deployments down there. The Caribbean is a very, very small part of drug trafficking and human trafficking rings that actually go up there. The majority of it, 85% of it, is in the Pacific side. I'm saying, why doesn't the Navy have a presence out there? Why are we bringing the PAC fleet out there to bring a presence out there? Because it's not needed at this point in time. The focus is, I believe, misdirection in the context is Venezuela. But what's that really about? I want you to listen to what Trump says here.
Drugs by sea, they call it also. That's almost down to nothing, as you can imagine. So they continue to come in by land at a little bit less because they see something is going to happen. They don't like it. They see something, and they're right. Something very serious is going to happen. The equivalent of what's happening by sea. And we're going to Congress just to tell them what we're doing, just to keep them informed. But we have to do it for national security. We have to do it to save lives.
So something serious is about to happen, indicating the U.S. is about to strike inside Venezuela and surrounding cartel territories. He stated Congress will be informed. And he's not talking about the water anymore. He's talking about outside of it. Well, Donald Trump was also asked about Colombia and Colombia's president, right? I mean, think about this. What's going on here? Here's a perspective that we don't typically take. We know Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran have various different training centers within Venezuela. Margarita Island, 2013 or 2011 congressional testimony validated this. We know a lot of them came up to the border through the Darien Gap to the U.S. border and infiltrated our country. We know they're in there. We know that this is one of the main reasons why We have ICE going out there targeting sanctuary cities. We have National Guard military deploying throughout our country. Why we have 20,000 troops on the southern border, right? Instantly deployable anywhere in the country. Marines out of Quantico, the fast reactionary force that can go out there and deploy. Specifically, if you have terrorist organizations that decide to all at the same time start attacking the United States of America. Now, isn't it interesting? Yesterday, we also had TikTok coming out from Customs and Border Patrol. We have Donald Trump, booms en route, and then boom, today, boom, we need to deploy the National Guard to Chicago. We know they're going to Chicago. What does that indicate to me? Well, do you remember a few weeks ago, or maybe even a few months ago, I said that inland attacks, U.S. Navy bombardment and missile strikes and drone strikes inside the cartel regions, Central America, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, will occur at the same time the National Guard deploys to these various different cities, because the moment you begin those strikes is when the cartels and the gangs activate their sleeper cells within those cities. And so it's going to be a coordinated event when the Trump administration does all this. This is what this is all leading up to. Now, what if I told you that Venezuela actually isn't the kingpin? Venezuela is the proxy. We were just talking about this. We know, the influence of the Middle East and Iran and Hezbollah, and they trained Venezuelan military with the IRGC, Margarita Island, all of this stuff. We know China funds a lot of the operations through Maduro and through Venezuela. But think about this. Trump has threatened tariffs and aid cuts against Colombia after disagreements with President Gustavo Petro and Colombian over deportations and military flights. The U.S. decertified Colombia as a cooperating partner in the war on drugs for the first time in nearly 30 years, citing failure to meet obligations, signaling a shift from partnership to pressure. Reports emphasize that Colombia, historically a strong U.S. ally in Latin America, is now being handled with blunt force tactics, aid withdrawal, trade threats, and diplomatic pressure. The dispute began over relatively routine issues, deportation, visas, but escalated quickly. Okay. So, is there something we need to look at here? Yeah, how about this? Colombia is one of the world's largest producers of cocaine. For example, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the UNODC, and other sources, Colombia accounted for about 67% of global cocoa leaf cultivation in recent years and recorded potential cocaine production of 2,644 tons in 2023. 2018 figures, Colombia, 2,370 tons of cocaine production and marketing, and the transit, only 210 tons of that transit through Venezuela. Colombia amounts to roughly 10 times the higher the figure than Venezuela in 1 year. Now, is there any significance to this? Yeah, well, Colombia actually is the origin of the majority of the trafficking and networks in Venezuela. It's not simply a matter of Colombian cartels having full control in Venezuela. The picture is complex, involving collaboration, transit routes, and Venezuelan actors, state complicity. But here are the key points. Venezuela is widely regarded as a major transit route for cocaine produced in Colombia, destined for the U.S., Europe, and Africa. Some Colombian cartel-affiliated groups operate in zones of Venezuela, especially near the border. For instance, La Guadalajara cartel has territory on the Colombian and the other regions within Venezuela. State actors in Venezuela, especially parts of the armed forces and border security units, are alleged to play roles in facilitating within these Colombian cartels. You got to remember, the Colombian cartels are a lot of what we heard of over the years. Colombian-linked cartels and trafficking networks operate in Venezuela and have massive amounts of control over Venezuelan cartels. In this sense of a foreign cartel ruling a country, Venezuelan state actors and Venezuelan criminal networks are deeply involved and co-opted with the Colombian groups integrated in those movements. Now, here's the real kicker. Trade between China and Colombia has grown rapidly, around 1.2 billion in 2004 to about 18.3 billion in 2024. China has become Colombia's second largest trade partner after the US, and in certain metrics is the largest source of imports. The balance, however, is skewed. For example, one article noted that Colombia's total exports, 49.6 billion from the US. The US receives 14.3 billion, while China receives only 2.4 billion. So it's kind of skewed on the numbers, but interpretations, China is a major market and supplier for Colombia. So in terms of economic interdependence, influence is substantial. So infrastructure and investing. I mean, I gotta remember, this is all part of the Belt Roads Initiative, right? China state banks and commercial banks have financed infrastructure and finance infrastructure and energy projects in Colombia. For example, in Chinese financing for Colombian projects between 2018 to 2023 resulted in $1.4 billion in U.S. money. Colombia formally joined China's Belt and Roads Initiative on May 14th, 2025 by signing a cooperation pact with China. Chinese companies, mining, energy, telecommunications are increasingly active in Colombia. Now, if you listen to Glenn Beck today, he said that, hey, look, everything that you're seeing happen right now in Venezuela, Colombia, and South America is about resources. It's about oil. It's about natural resources, rare earth minerals, and metals. Why? Because it's the Monroe Doctrine. China, stay the hell out of our hemisphere. What's going on is we're watching a transition away from Northern South American controlled China. Belt and Road Initiative influenced China, funded China, drug trade funded by China, fentanyl trade coming in, mass immigration to the United States of America, cartel support and gang support from China. And we're watching an eradication of that by pressure directly on those governments with basically the U.S. military at their door. And I think that what we're about to see is strikes inside Colombia, strikes inside Venezuela, high-class military targets, as well as potentially even regime actors, and then the cartel trade routes. I saw Donald Trump post it again, so I wanted to see if he said anything about 14. Nothing about 14. Oh, well. You gotta look. You gotta see. Maybe he will. I think it's pretty cool, though. So that's the idea of what we're seeing. That I believe in China. There's a lot going on. China has a deep state. China is massive. You don't understand the complexity of the CCP and the PLA dynamics of how China operates. And Xi Jinping has massive amounts of power in China. And he might be the lifelong dictator in China like Mao, but there are still people that have more power than him when they combine their forces. Rings combine, the forces unite, right? And what we're seeing right now is a deep state formulation, I believe, in China, where Xi Jinping is being undermined in certain contexts. I've laid this out. I know some people are saying this is not happening. Some people are saying, yeah, this is really happening. We'll have to wait and see what actually occurs. Now, one of the other places that China has a massive influence on, and this primarily stems economically, is Russia. So if you're looking at Donald Trump's moves throughout the last year, everything that we're seeing happen deals with energy, supply chain, logistics, and rare earth minerals and metals. It is all about that. Everything from the tariffs on down, renegotiating trade deals, to supporting Middle Eastern partners, to throwing our Navy in the middle of the Caribbean. It's all about resources. Why? Well, I think we all know why. I've laid this out. The future is now, and whoever controls the resources on this planet controls the future. It's really what it comes down to. Artificial intelligence is only going to get smarter. Pandora's box is open. You're not closing it. Whoever controls the power and energy that's going to go in to fund that, who builds out the technological infrastructure that's going to sustain and substantiate it, that's who's going to rule the world. Because we know the formula for AI progression and what makes AI very, very smart. It's computation, it's data, and it's energy. And the one variable that is inside the control of a government system is energy and resources. Building that infrastructure allows you to build higher, powerful, more advanced processing. That's just going to come with time. That specifically comes with artificial intelligence actually increasing in intensity. That also has the lifeblood of itself, data being thrown into it, because the more data networks that you can upgrade and get out there with more modern and current technology, the more data that can flow through them. So those two are self-continuous. That once you begin building it, it automatically comes. The one global variable that's in constraint and actually able to control is power, is energy, period. And everything that you've seen Donald Trump do, you saw Donald Trump going to United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, right? He went there and he made deals. Over $13 trillion just from those three countries alone being invested in the United States of America in AI, quantum computing, biotech, so forth over the next 10 years. With that, he produced defense cooperation agreements and defense deals with those countries specifically. And there's much more to that, the geopolitical scenario that actually occurs within the Middle East, obviously keeping Israel from being that yelling and screaming little child that always wants to get their way. Now you can kind of ease that down a little bit when you have some, Arab nations that have more rationale than radical Islamic nations, right? So that's one part that we looked at. Then we saw the Iran conflict, and Donald Trump sent the message, basically shut down Israel's claim to go to full-out war, but at the same time limited China's influence directly in Iran by making backdoor deals with Iran. And I know that that's sometimes hard to see, but what you have to look at is you have to look at Pakistan as that intermediary. India and Pakistan, same type of situation. Donald Trump negotiated the end of the war there, threatening terrorists on both sides. Modi and Trump are back on the talks again. India and Pakistan and the United States. The chief of the army staff keeps on coming down to the White House, meeting them. And why? That's its back door to Iran. In other words, Donald Trump in the Middle East completely undermined the Belt and Roads Initiative, China. And he did this very, very strategically. He also did it in the European Union. China has massive economic and financial influence over Europe. They were integrated very much so like they are in Canada, and how they were infiltrated in the United States throughout the governments. And he's helped to levy that, to reduce that by going into the tariff war, limiting China with various different tariffs, renegotiating trade deals, switching European imports to the United States, and having Europe now buy U.S. oil and stuff like this. It does a few different things. Number one, up until 2023, the majority of the oil and gas, LNG, that went into Europe came from Russia. Even though they were supporting Ukraine in the Ukraine-Russia war, the majority of oil and gas, LNG, came in from Russia. Donald Trump renegotiated that and changed that. Now less than 13% of the oil going into the EU comes from Russia. That's a massive hit to Russian economy. He did this on purpose because at the same time, he was negotiating deals in the Middle East with the OPEC nations. Now, OPEC only supplies about 14% of LNG and oil and gas directly to China. Okay? Iran supplied a good amount, but through proxy, because they have to do it because of the sanctions that are already in place. But that actually decreased after the Donald Trump bombed their nuclear facilities. Same thing with Venezuela. One of the other aspects to look at what the Navy is doing in Venezuela, there's more going on than meets the eye. And I'm going to come back to the Middle East in a second, but there's more going on than meets the eye. What we're seeing every once in a while is an occasional strike on a go-fast vessel or a submarine. We're not seeing what the Navy is doing every day. And it's not just sitting around being sailors sailing the ocean in the Caribbean and hanging out at some ports every once in a while. They are boarding vessels. Why are they boarding vessels? Commercial cargo vessels. Because what actually happens is Venezuela and Iran, they ship oil to China through epoxy shadow vessels. So they'll create some type of shell company that's not affiliated. It gets insured. They'll load it up with oil and gas. They'll send it out into the high seas, and they'll send it over to China, and it gets around sanctions. Well, with the U.S. military operating within the Caribbean region, they can now board these vessels, identify them, send them back to port, have them seized in violations of international law. And then they can fine through international law those insurance companies that insured that cargo because it was in violation of sanctions. In other words, no oil is flowing right now from Iran or Venezuela to China through these proxy methods because of the presence of the U.S. Navy. So what this is doing is this is forcing China into a very narrow stream. They can only buy oil really from one place, Russia. What happened today? Well, last week, you got to go back. Last week, yeah, and John Kidd, you're not wrong. South America, Brazil. Absolutely right. Brazil is a huge player. It's the intermediary that Venezuela utilizes to actually ship a lot of their oil off into those regions. The U.S. Navy has a presence all around those international waters, 100 and 150 miles off that coastline, and they are monitoring and watching all of that. So just keep that in mind. All right, so Trump said today, let's kind of validating what we're saying here, but listen to this one. I gotta get some water anyway.
President Xi to stop purchasing all that Russian oil that's funding this war against Ukraine?
Well, I think I'll be talking to him about it. I think it's a little bit of a different talk. India, as you know, has told me they are stop. You know, it's a process. You can't just stop it. But by the end of the year, they'll be down to almost nothing. That's a big thing. That was almost 40% of the oil. India, they've been great. Spoke to Prime Minister Modi yesterday. They've been absolutely great. China's a little bit different, you know, they're a little bit different relationship they have with Russia. It was never good, but because of Biden and Obama, they got forced together. They should never have been forced together, but they're a little bit forced. But they're by nature, they can't be friendly. They can't be friendly. By nature, I hope they are friendly, frankly, but they can't be. You should not have forced Russia and China together. And Biden did that, and Obama did that. They forced them together because of energy, because of oil. And so they are closer than they would normally be. I think I'll probably be talking about it. What I'll really be talking to him about is how do we end the war with Russia and Ukraine, whether it's through oil or energy or anything else.
I love it because what you're seeing, what Donald Trump is saying right there is very similar in context to what Senator Kennedy says right here. And it validates everything I was just saying. Listen.
But she is calling a lot of, she could end that war in Ukraine and settle the Middle East tomorrow. Tomorrow.
Really?
All he'd have to do is call Putin and say, Putin, I want it stopped. And if Putin says, no, all she will say, look, I don't mean to embarrass you, but if you don't stop it, I'll punish you the rest of your natural life and you won't be running Russia anymore. And he would stop. Same thing with Iran. He can back them off in a phone call. But I'm telling you, I've seen the classified and unclassified information. He's behind a lot of this.
What's he talking about there? How does Xi have that much power over Putin? Well, Western sanctions have basically cut Russia off from the rest of the world. China is the #1 supplier of Russian oil, or the #1 purchaser of Russian oil. So the Trump administration over the last 9 months has basically circumvented the rest of the world away from Russian oil, forcing, so 2 points, Russia, China. Russia had the European market, they had the Chinese market, they had India, all of this stuff. You remember, India was buying Russian oil under sanctions, rebranding it and selling it again. Okay, that stopped. Trump stopped that. So what did Trump do? Trump basically cut off anybody else from buying Russian oil. That means that Russian, if they want to continue production and keep their economy up, has to increase the amount of oil to China. Okay, so, but that also means that China has to buy more Russian oil through sanctions, proxy means. That's going to become important here in a second. Well, at the same time, You have like basically a naval blockade on Venezuela. We're not allowing ships to leave these ports. We shut down the Panama Canal, which was one of the main routes utilized for these shadow vessels to ship oil and gas cargo to China. Well, Iran we put in check. So China is now forced to either buy from OPEC, which Donald Trump has in their hand with defense cooperation agreements, $13 trillion of investment in the United States of America. All he has to do is call up OPEC and say, cut off China, and they cut off China. So China's only option is to buy more from Russia, which they buy right now, 84% of their oil and gas, LNG, from Russia. Well, what happened today? It's just really interesting, just how things all unfold. Listen to this, and this will start to make a lot more sense that what Donald Trump says here is not actually about Russia.
You said as recently as yesterday that you still believe that Putin wants to end the war.
Yeah,
and today
I do.
You took this step to ratchet the sanctions and put more pressure on him. What else are you going to do to encourage him to get there, or can you explain why you do believe that he wants peace?
Yeah, it's a good question. Today is a very big day in terms of what we're doing. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. We just answered having to do with the various forms of missiles and everything else that we're looking at, but we don't think that's going to be necessary. We would like to see them just take the line that has been formed over quite a long period of time and go and let's go home. Last week they had almost 8,000 soldiers killed. Many Russians were killed last week. Many Ukrainians were killed last week. We think it's ridiculous and would like to have it end.
Why do you think you want peace, though? Why do you still believe that?
I think they want peace. I think they both want peace at this point. It's been, it's almost 4 years. You're going into 4 years. And if I were president, it never would have started. But yeah.
Okay. And there you have it. He sanctioned 2 Russian oil companies today. Well, why did he do that? Well, what are these 2 Russian oil companies? Let's get into that. So, in a world of misdirection and global optics, these sanctions don't hurt Russia. They hurt China. Here's why. The sanctions target Rosneft and Lukoil, Russia's 2 largest oil producers. But Russia's domestic economy is already decoupled from Western financing. These companies don't rely on the U.S. for trade or the dollar anymore. Who does depend on them? China. China buys roughly 20% of its oil from Russia. Well, it's actually about 40 to 60% right now. People are saying 14. Trump, Lee Zeldin with 14 for a timestamp. I'll have to check it. I saw the Lee Zeldin post. I don't see 14, guys. Oh. Oh, that's funny. So, guys, we asked for a 14. I want you to see how funny this is. Look at the video timestamp. $2:57. 7 and 7, 14. And literally moments after we requested it. That's brilliant. That's amazing. That's crazy. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Let's jump back into this. Interesting night, isn't it? Very, very interesting night. So going back into this, when we start to look at this, so by sanctioning Russia, Washington doesn't weaken Moscow. It chokes Beijing's energy lifeline. And look at the timing. Gulf allies, Saudi, UAE, Qatar just deepened defense pacts with the United States of America. Venezuela is under pressure and monitored by U.S. Navy presence. Iran's exports are heavily sanctioned and tracked. That leaves Russia as China's last scale energy supplier. Cut that pipeline and even complicate it with insurance and banking sanctions. and China's access to oil becomes fragile overnight. Trump just turned sanctions into a strategic containment weapon. He's not isolating Russia. He's using Russian energy leverage to box in China. Pressure, peace through pressure, power through resources, no missiles required. The other beautiful part about this is that it forces China's hands, because last week, about a week and a half ago, China came out and they restricted their rare earth minerals and metals to Western nations, which is just a critical supply chain. I mean, I think the 84% was actually China to the rest of the world. 84 to 86% of the rare earth minerals and metals actually come from China globally, and this is what fuels a lot of military and technological development throughout the world. Well, China basically came in and said the PLA will now be in charge of the decision-making process over our rare earth minerals and metals. So anybody who wants to buy that, it has to get approval through the Chinese military. Well, that's massive. Trump's like, okay, we're going to put 155% tariffs on you. And then today, well, so last 2 days, let's review it. Yesterday, he says that, hey, Budapest, we're not coming. We're not going to go to the Budapest meeting. But that's interesting, because what we're seeing from Russia is the Kremlin insists that preparations are still underway. Nothing has changed, and Russia's stance hasn't changed. They're still planning the Budapest meeting. Putin's like, da. So Trump says it's not going to happen until something changes, and Putin accepts the terms. Well, here's the thing. Remember, Trump told Zelensky to accept the terms, not Putin. But he just told Putin to accept the terms today. What terms? The terms are with China. He's trying to cut China's influence off from these countries. He's not trying to destroy these countries. He's trying to free them from the grips of China. And in doing so, he weakens China's war effort. If China ramped up their war machine today, right now, Donald Trump can shut them down in less than 2 months. Reason being, because if you look at what's known as a strategic petroleum reserve, basically gas, LNG, liquid reserves, number one, Donald Trump has filled ours back up. We could last, 200 years off of the natural resources in the United States of America alone, especially with the big, beautiful bill, what Donald Trump did, removing all restrictions on leasing on federal lands of oil and gas leases. We've filled our strategic petroleum reserve back up. China has been packing away oil and gas, but you got to remember, they're not an oil and gas producing nation. So they have to purchase it with excess reserves. They've been buying a lot of gold. They've been buying a lot of oil, but they don't have nearly enough oil like we do here in the United States of America. So if you want to restrict China militarily, you have to understand that every day that their economy operates, every day that their military and their people operate with 1.2 billion people, that takes a certain allocation of energy to do that. And if you know what that allocation is, even in the aspect that if they went down to strict rationing for militaries at 99% of that energy utilization of simply what they have in the reserves, you know how long they could last in a fight. And that amount of time is approximately 60 days. China would tell you it's 100. 60 days. Now, by cutting off global supply chains to China, specifically liquid natural gas, oil and gas, Venezuela, Iran, Russia, ensuring that they can't get it from OPEC. They buy from OPEC, but they can't get it in the time of war from OPEC because of defense cooperation agreements. That's part of the classified briefings that happened on those defense agreement pacts. Even though it would be devastating for those economies, that is part of the agreement. So the big part of this is that Russia is the key player that will fuel China's energy economy as well as their military in a time of war. If you can control that part right there through one pipeline strategically and compress it more and more and more, China has no other option but to acquiesce, to capitulate. If they go to war, they're screwed. Donald Trump averted World War III simply through economic warfare, logistics and supply chain warfare. He is a master 5D chess player, and you're watching this play out on the global stage, and it's absolutely amazing. Like today, we're gonna sanction 2 of Russia's top oil companies. It has nothing to do with Russia. Putin's probably in on it, Putin's like, okay, this is the two companies that you sanction. And the reason is because we move oil through shadow companies through this and this and this. And we can still do that through these other companies. And Russia has like 6 other companies that mostly are state controlled and state owned that they can move the LNG and the oil through to China. But here's the thing is they still have to follow by maritime channels. Now, the sanctioning of the 2 largest ones was done because it's a warning. It's a shot across the bow specifically to China. Now, with China, we do have some interpolitical play going on. There's rumors that Xi Jinping has been kind of removed from duties and powers, that there's been purges happening within the military. I believe that there's a deep state rising up in China, that they're trying to undermine Xi, but I do believe Xi is still in control of power, even though we have intelligence that says otherwise. We can just put that aside for now. What we have to understand is that China is a machine, period. China's a machine. It doesn't matter what Xi does or says. China's a machine. It has an agenda, and it wants to fulfill that agenda. And over the last 10 months, Donald Trump has completely annihilated and decimated the Belt and Roads Initiative and China's global agenda. They dismantled their supply chain infrastructure that they built out through the cooperation of BRICS agreements. And then you get the Ukraine war. I mean, the whole thing with Russia and Ukraine and Trump calling off Budapest was about Ukraine. Zelensky says that he's not going to give any leeway. But today you had Mark Rutte from NATO come out and say that I believe Donald Trump's going to have peace in Ukraine very, very shortly. What does that mean? Is that you got to go back to the whole meaning behind Russia and Ukraine. So if China is the primary financier of Russian economy, why does Putin continuously bomb the shit out of Ukraine even after a ceasefire? Is he being told to do that to sustain his economy? Because the only way that China is going to continue to purchase Russian oil and Russian goods is if he sustains that war with Ukraine, because that pulls NATO in closer to war and conflict with Russia, which then Article 5 draws in and the United States comes in. It weakens one of the main superpowers in the world, Russia, but it also weakens the United States of America. So militarily, if I'm China, I'm going to fund a proxy war between the Western world and a global superpower that's going to include another global superpower. And I'm going to fund that while I'm generating massive amounts of war supplies behind my back, missiles, bombs, and guns and everything like that, giving the rations over here to Russia as they fight this war and they almost go bankrupt and they lose all of their global trade deals. That put Russia into the same pipeline that we're talking about, forcing them to only do deals with China. And then China presses that to ensure that Russia continues its war effort with Zelensky. Zelensky has a cultural standpoint where he's not going to stand down. Russia just says, give us Donbass because that's excess oil. And that ensures that we're going to capture back the European markets once a ceasefire comes through. Zelensky's like, that's not going to happen because Zelensky and Putin are both controlled by the same side, which is China and the globalists. Then you have the United States basically giving all of their weapons and armaments over 4 years to Ukraine. On the other side of the house, you got NATO buying up all of Western arms and weapons that are going over to Europe and then going back into Ukraine that are being utilized against Russia. And at the time, you had the West weakening militarily, economically, socially, culturally, while China's rising up. And this is how they were able to spread across the globe and make all of these deals and expand the Belt and Roads Initiative and become an incredible military superpower. So what we're watching right now between Ukraine and Russia is actually a proxy of China, and everything that Donald Trump is doing in the context of move making is actually to undermine China and is a hit against China, trying to separate the grip that China has on those two countries without firing one shot. Wow. Fucking amazing, isn't it? All right. That's the Trump doctrine. Holy shit, that was an hour and 15 minutes. That was crazy. That was crazy with Trump, guys. That was really crazy. Man, tomorrow we got the live Q&A after the show. Don't worry, this show is not done, guys. We got some more stuff to talk about here. So this show is definitely not done. I got a lot more news to get into. And let me see here. Yeah, we can do that one. Let's pay some bills here on the good old Rumble. And you're going to see some QR code come up and everything like that. We're going to go ahead and drop this out. All right. Nearly every family has been touched by cancer, and when it happens, the hardest thing isn't always the treatment. It's the overwhelm, the endless research, and the fear of choosing wrong. That's why the incredible Dr. Michael Caulfield, one of the top integrative cancer doctors in the country, is hosting the most powerful cancer educational event online, the Healing Blueprint Masterclass, a live half-day virtual event on November 6th. It's everything patients, survivors, and families wish they'd known sooner. How to understand the real causes of cancer, what alternative and conventional therapies work best together, and how to bring peace and focus to the chaos. Stop wasting precious time and money on trial and error. You'll even receive your own Healing Clarity Guidebook, where you'll create a personalized plan for your healing or prevention journey. It's happening live on November 6th. And for half the price of a 1-hour session with Dr. K, you'll get 4 hours of live teaching. Go to tkcblueprint.com and use code BLUEPRINT for 50% off your ticket. 4 hours with Dr. K would save you more than months and bring back the hope you've been searching for. Appreciate it. tkcblueprint.com. Thank you so much, Dr. K, on that. Glad we can run this out. So on the other side of the house, I need a drink. Hold on. Yeah, this is mind-blowing because, man, when you start to think about this, like in the large global scenario, it makes so much sense, but it's so difficult to kind of pinpoint that and see this. This is why. Now go back. China, they had insurance policies. They had contingency plans. This is why you had 23 million illegal immigrants flow over the U.S. southern border, coming up from the Darien Gap, being supported by the United Nations and the various NGOs, being shipped in on planes and boats into Venezuela. That's why they funded Middle Eastern fundamental radical terrorists, Taliban, Houthis, Hezbollah, Unit 910, Chinese military-age males coming over the border, going to sanctuary cities. This has been planned and plotted for a very, very long time. It's all interrelated and interconnected. This is why you had the moral and ethical decay in the United States of America, why the infusion of drugs and fentanyl and various different opiates over the last 20 years. This is part of the entire globalist plan. And China is that capital country that runs and operates this globalist agenda. It is true totalitarianism that the New World Order wanted to implement in the world, and it is the machine vessel that they were using to do it. Ex-CIA Director John Brennan initiated Obama and Hillary's Russian collusion hoax to destroy President Trump and run cover for her email scandal. Numerous declassified documents prove Brennan's role and involvement. Our own CIA and FBI are involved. Brennan and Clapper will be the next dominoes to fall from perjury, conspiracy charges, etc. No matter what, they will indict them all. And let's just listen to, I believe this is John Turley. Let's just listen to this right here and get this update on this.
What U.S. intelligence knew back in 2016. Sources telling Fox News Digital that the U.S. intel had credible foreign sources indicating that the FBI would play a role in spreading the Trump-Russia collusion narrative. That was before the FBI launched its controversial probe. Now, CIA Director John Ratcliffe is expected to declassify intel from former special counsel John Durham's report on the origins of the FBI Trump campaign probe. Here to discuss what's next in this investigation and the legal ramifications for the big players, Jonathan Turley, GW Law Prof, Fox News contributor. Jonathan, I watched your interview of a couple days ago, and it was so good and so clear on an issue that can get fairly murky. that I think it bears repeating. Why does this matter so much that the FBI and the CIA with Barack Obama decided to, it looks like, massage, manipulate, and manufacture intel?
Well, Laura, we're finally seeing parts of the timeline filled in, and it's creating a very damning picture. Remember, in July 2016, John Brennan went to Obama and briefed him that Hillary Clinton was going to invent this Russian collusion theory to distract from her email scandal. And so that was back in July. And then we now know, because of recently declassified material, that months later, it was Brennan who intervened, overruled people at CIA, and put the Steele dossier, this infamous debunked report, into the assessment being used by the Obama White House at the very end of Obama's term. That helped seed this whole Russian collusion investigation that the FBI then used to effectively derail the first term of President Trump. Now, what's fascinating about this, Laura, is that they're saying that this is coming from foreign sources that heard that the FBI was going to be part of this. This is before the rollout, essentially, of this plan. This is the real Russian conspiracy. There wasn't a Russian collusion conspiracy. This is that conspiracy of people that seeded this investigation and intentionally kept it going, even lying to the courts. One person pled guilty to the crime of lying to the FISA court. And so these details are very important as they fill these things out. And Laura, just to finish this up, it's fascinating the response of the media with the Russian collusion narrative that was funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign secretly. They denied that they were funded the Steele dossier, but they took that, didn't question it. And it turns out that all these other people had heard about Hillary Clinton's plan, but these reporters that got Pulitzers for this didn't seem to bother to pursue those types of leads.
Jonathan, we could be seeing perjury charges.
Now, see, the interesting part is the mainstream media still hasn't even admitted it. Now, Slavanya Lakova, she was, if you guys don't remember, this goes back to General Flynn when he was DIA director, his visit over at Cambridge University, where he began a communication, just a friendship with Slavanya Lakova. She actually became friends with the Flynn family. And then what happened is other people at that event, Steph Helper, and so forth, turned this testimony on against Flynn during the Russia Gate information, and claimed that Flynn had an affair with Lakova and all this stuff. It never happened. But so she says here, it all started with Brennan. John Brennan's operative, Stephen Helper, invented the Trump campaign Russian intelligence contract by falsely portraying me as a Russian spy who had an affair with General Flynn. Helper then reported this lie to the FBI in coordination with Comey and British intelligence in order to justify an investigation of a senior Trump campaign advisor, General Flynn, that was known as Crossfire Razor, and leaked it to the media. After the 2016 election, Brennan doubled down, testified to Congress in May 2017 that the CIA report to the FBI had contacts between senior Trump campaign officials and Russian intelligence. But there was never any contact between Trump campaign and Russian intelligence. All Brennan had was the innocuous contact between me and General Flynn. The CIA, with British help, had organized and staged a contact, which became a pivotal event in the grand Russian hoax conspiracy. Now, what she said right there is so crucial to understand. She goes, the CIA, with British help, had organized and staged a contact, quote unquote, which became the pivotal event for the grand Russian conspiracy. And this is what she's talking about. The Trump campaign to the FBI, the evidence suggests that the CIA and intelligence community, including potentially the intelligence communities of the UK and Australia, created the contacts and interactions that they then reported to the FBI as suspicious, creating a Russian collusion narrative. Stefan Helper features prominently in the plot, but all but officially outed by the government as a CIA source. The aging academic had contact with at least 4 members of the Trump campaign. Right? The dinner went forward as planned on February 28th, 2014. with Helper, Dearlove, and Andrew all in attendance alongside Flynn and Lachova and several others from Cambridge community. After the dinner, Andrew invited Lachova to address General Flynn, and they had a brief public exchange about her academic research on Russia. Then after General Flynn informally became an advisor to the Trump presidential campaign, Helper came back into the picture with Andrew inviting Lachova and Helper to join him for dinner at his house. Well, the 2014 dinner went unnoticed at the time and seemed of no concern to the Obama administration. After the Russian collusion narrative gained steam, the media reported that U.S. intelligence officials had serious concerns about Michael Flynn's appointment as the White House National Security Advisor because of his history of contacts with Moscow and his encounter with a woman who had trusted access to Russian spy agency records. Other outlets made clear that then unidentified woman was Lachova. So had Helper and his British intelligence counterparts arranged Flynn's incidental meeting with the Russian-born Lachova and then reported that contact to the FBI, later justified the spying on Flynn. So this is Brennan at work. So you have to think about this. They comprise in June of 2016, they comprise, okay, we're going to do this Russian narrative. They got to go after Flynn. Brennan gets involved and says, hey, you know what? We had a trail on Flynn. We know that when he was DIA, he was over at Cambridge. We have some contacts over there, Stephen Helper. We're going to reach out to him and see if there's anything he can tell us about Flynn. They reach out to Stephen Helper. He says, oh, yeah, actually, there was a young lady, Miss Lachova, that Flynn actually met that day. And then he goes out and says, okay, cool. Can you get Lachova back over to the United States and arrange a meeting with Flynn right now? And this is what they did. And they set up Flynn again. This is all in his book. It's amazing. So Brennan falsely claimed he had a very senior source in the Kremlin close to President Putin. Brennan used the made-up intelligence from the non-existent source to fabricate the Obama-ordered 2017 ICA to say President Putin installed President Trump. In fact, Brennan had no such source in the Kremlin close to Putin. Brennan only had Steph Helper and Chris Steele making up dirt for him. Brennan's going down. Now, the real question is, and this is a hard one to find. And I want people to begin, my Anon friends out there, I want you to begin researching this part, okay? Brennan wasn't the mastermind behind this. Brennan got involved, utilized his contacts. Maybe the mastermind. Obama wasn't really the mastermind behind all of this. Clinton wasn't the mastermind behind this. George Soros was the mastermind behind this, or whoever the hand guiding the George Soros networks. You got to remember, it was Lenny Bernardo in the June 26, 2016 email that came out saying, hey, we contacted Julianne Smith, the foreign policy advisor to Hillary Clinton. She confirmed to us that HRC is okay, giving the thumbs up for the Russia collusion plan against Trump. That's not Hillary Clinton going out there and doing it. Hillary Clinton then takes the next few days and months going out there and getting the Obama administration up to date. What do I mean by that? The same day, Bill Clinton meets with Loretta Lynch on the Phoenix airport at the Clinton-Lynch tarmac meeting. Right after this email confirmed that this was going to happen. That weekend, Hillary Clinton spends the weekend with James Comey on July 4th weekend. July 7th, she's on the campaign trail with Barack Obama through Air Force One to North Carolina. Peter Strzok ends the Hillary Clinton email investigation a few days later. July 31st, Crossfire Hurricane is open, starting with Crossfire Razor and the focus on General Flynn. August 5th is the main meeting that they all have in the White House to plan it all out. But origination starts with the Open Societies Foundation. So you got to begin asking yourself, where is the George Soros, John Brennan connection? George Soros, John Brennan connection. If you can make that connection, blows us all up. Because I guarantee you it's there. All right, what else do we got here? Now, a lot of this is about AI, guys. Everything in the context of resources and what we're seeing with resources is about OpenAI. OpenAI has engineered itself as too big to fail, according to new studies. Sam Altman didn't just build an AI company, he engineered a systemic risk. OpenAI has tied fates to NVIDIA, Oracle, AMD, Broadcom, Microsoft, and vast swaths of U.S. economy to its success through a deal-making blitz that added $630 billion in market value to partners in a single day after the announcement. The math doesn't work. OpenAI will generate $13 billion in revenue this year. They signed a $600 billion computing commitments over the next 5 years. So what's going on here? OpenAI has become too big to fail, because if they do, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Broadcom, all these companies lose massive amounts of money. Well, that's the thing. You can't fail. If you fail, China wins. If you fail, another country is going to rise up. The question then becomes is, how do we mitigate the risk of artificial intelligence? How do we ensure that artificial intelligence doesn't rise up and rule over all of us, or become hyper intelligent faster than we have the capability of actually learning? You have to put safety and protocols in, of which these AI companies are not doing. The big people at these AI companies are all saying the same thing: is we can't control it now. What do you think it's going to happen in the next year? So they're working on ways to integrate this directly into their minds so they can learn as fast as AI, so AI never supersedes them. That's sick. That's fucked up. So we got to wonder here, what's really going on with this AI revolution? This is what is fueling the Trump economy. Why we got $20 trillion of investment capital coming into the United States over the next 10 years. Why we're allocating and control over all natural resources, oil, gas, and rare earth minerals and metals in the world. Why we're controlling logistics and supply chain lines. Because whoever gets artificial superintelligence first is going to rule the world. They're going to dominate the world. They're going to dominate space. It's an arms race. And the arms are AI. But the next tranche of artificial intelligence that's actually going to be developed is not going to necessarily be artificial superintelligence. It's going to be AI human integration. It's coming. Not only with mRNA type of technology in the context of allowing AI to determine genomic structures and modifications and changing, producing superhumans or humans with super abilities, but also technological integration directly into humanity itself. This is going to modulate humanity and our evolutionary ideals. And this is going to happen relatively fast over the course of the next few years. This is Pandora's box. This is happening. It's happening right now. And there's not much that you and me can do about it. Friday night, Jeff Wong is going to be hosting the Conversations on the Fringe podcast. He's going to be bringing on a guest, Bruce Randall, who's going to be talking about artificial intelligence, consciousness, transhumanism. He's going to be talking about a lot of these problems. Hoping that you guys can join in on that Friday night and listen to that conversation, because it's going to be stellar. So what's next? We have to problem solve, people. We have to figure out how AI can exist in the world that doesn't have too much control, but still becomes super intelligent, but cannot undermine humanity, as well as that we do not become the inferior species on this planet. Because that's really what it comes down to. I'm not putting machines inside my body. I'm not going to do genetic manipulation within my body. I'm not going to taint my soul like that. But other people will. How do we ensure that we do not become obsolete or inferior? Because imagine what happens if the same bureaucracy, the same evil in the world controls that. Completely changes the entire world. It enslaves all of us in one fell swoop. We're nothing but lemmings at that point. Once again, I forgot to put out any of my sponsors or advertisers or anything like that. I'll say this. They're not sponsoring us, but this is for anybody out there who's interested, the Badlands Great American Restoration Tour, November 6th through 9th. This is just a few weeks away. I will be one of the presenters there, speakers there. This is Badlands Media, Cocoa Beach, Florida. You can find this on badlandsmedia.tv. Badlandsmedia.tv, and go to the events section at the top right there. And you should find this and how to get in-person tickets or buy virtual tickets. And I did put out a link yesterday for everybody to find that. You know, I don't have, like, I was going to throw out some affiliate links and stuff like that. Just let this scroll or whatever. Redpills.tv if you want to support me. If you guys want to support me in any way, shape, and form. redpills.tv. That's my website. All of my support links and my social media links are there. Get a subscription of where you're at to this show. That really does help support me. If you want to support me in other ways, go to redpills.tv right there. If you're looking for our music that we do have, and I'm about to play here in a second, it is available on iTunes, Amazon Music, Google, YouTube. Just search Guardians of Truth. Guardians of Truth is the band name, Guardians of Truth. Or you can go to redpillsmusic.com, and you can find it all there. All right? Guardiansoftruth.com or Guardians of Truth, and you can search that on iTunes, wherever it is, and you should find it. If not, just go to redpillsmusic.com, and that would be the best way. So I'm going to leave you with the outro song that everybody's absolutely loving. I'm loving it too. Hope you guys all have a great night, evening. I will be back tomorrow. I will be back with you tomorrow night with my co-host. I believe she's joining me tomorrow, Tammy Cuthbert-Garcia. And I hope you guys have a great night. Much love, respect. God bless. Take care. See you next time.
There was a time when our children stood tall, hand on their hearts, one voice for all. There was a time when honor had weight, when the flag was a symbol, not a debate. There was a time when our history was known, with pride in the rules that made us our own. There was a time, respect for the brave, for those who bled, for the lives they gave. Now the homeland burns in silent war. Truth is twisted, we can't ignore. Through the smoke, a voice still calls. We the people will not fall. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil under. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time when truth was clear, when the media served, not ruled by fear. There was a time when leaders stood fast, guarding the people, defending the past. Now corruption wears a crown, lies are fed to tear us down. But Q said watch, and Q said see. The silent war will set us free. From the front lines, soldiers stare, wondering if we're still there. Their blood, their hope, their sacrifice will not be sold for a last price. There was a time, but the time isn't Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. There was a time is near, the great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone, patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave, no more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time, there was a time, now is the time. Do it.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!